a routine day. But for one particular flight, a UPS jet carrying thousands of pounds of cargo and countless stories in its hold, this would be the morning everything went wrong. The sun had barely begun to rise, casting a faint orange glow across the clouds, when the UPS crew checked in with air traffic control. The flight had originated from Louisville, the beating heart of UPS Global Air Hub, known to many as Worldport. Every night, hundreds of brown-tailed cargo planes roar in and out of that airport, delivering goods to every corner of the world. But on this particular morning, something felt different. The aircraft, a Boeing 767 freighter, had been loaded through the night. Boxes, parcels, and containers had been stacked carefully, filling the main deck. The pilots were experienced. One was a former military aviator. The other had logged thousands of hours on cargo routes across the U.S. Nothing in their per-flight checks hinted at trouble. Every system appeared normal. Weather reports mentioned light fog, typical for this region, nothing out of the ordinary. As the engines came alive, the ground crew watched it taxi toward the runway, unaware they were seeing this aircraft for the last time. The tower cleared it for takeoff, and the Boeing began its climb into the pale morning light. For the first few minutes, everything was routine. The crew engaged the autopilot, communicating with air traffic control as they ascended. But soon, a subtle warning blinked on the flight display, something that didn't immediately seem serious, yet enough to make the captain take notice. A fire indication in the forward cargo compartment. The first officer immediately began running through the checklist. In cargo operations, a fire indication is one of the worst alarms a crew can get. There are no passengers to evacuate, no easy escape. The only option is to fight the fire in the air or land as fast as possible. The captain called ATC, Louisville Center. "We've got a fire warning light. Request immediate return." The controller acknowledged and began vectoring them back. The aircraft turned, descending through the low clouds, but inside that cargo bay, something was already burning. Lithium batteries, small, powerful, and dangerous, had been packed among other shipments. When one of them short-circuited, it triggered a chain reaction. The fire spread quickly, feeding on packaging material and oxygen leaking through the deck seals. Within minutes, thick, toxic smoke filled the cockpit. The pilots donned their oxygen masks, their voices distorted as they tried to communicate. "We've lost visibility," the first officer shouted. The cockpit was filling with smoke so dense that they could barely read their instruments. Back in the tower, controllers could hear the strain in their voices. The radar showed the plane descending rapidly, but the crew couldn't see the runway. The heat from the fire was melting electrical wires behind the panels. Warning chimes echoed through the cockpit. The captain fought to keep the plane stable, while the first officer tried to program the autopilot for an emergency descent. But systems were failing one by one. The smoke detector alarms, the temperature sensors, the pressure warnings all flashing red. The cockpit was now a furnace. UPS Flight 1354, say your intentions. The controller called out, silence. Then a strained reply came through static. "We're trying to make the field, can't see anything, smoke everywhere." Those were among the last words heard from the crew. Moments later, witnesses on the ground near Birmingham, Kentucky, looked up to see a massive jet descending too low, too fast, its wings banking sharply. The aircraft clipped the tops of trees before slamming into a hillside just short of the runway. The explosion lit up the foggy morning sky. Debris scattered across the wooded area, twisted metal, burning cargo, and fragments of the fuselage. Within seconds, the silence returned, broken only by the crackling of fire. Emergency crews raced to the scene, but the inferno was too intense. By the time firefighters reached the wreckage, the cockpit had been consumed. Both pilots perished in the crash. For the rest of that morning, thick smoke rose over the hills of Kentucky, a haunting symbol of what had gone wrong high above. As investigators arrived, they were met with a grim sight. The main fuselage was torn apart, and parts of the cargo were still smoldering. The NTSB immediately began collecting flight recorders, the black boxes that would reveal what truly happened. It took hours to locate them beneath the wreckage. When the data was finally recovered, the recordings told a chilling story. The crew had followed every emergency checklist correctly. They'd tried to contain the fire, vent smoke, and return to the airport, but the fire had already overwhelmed the aircraft's systems faster than anyone could react. The cockpit voice recorder captured their last moments, coughing, shouting, and struggling to see through the smoke. One pilot tried to read instruments through a flashlight, while the other attempted to control the descent manually. The heat was so intense that parts of the aluminum skin inside the cargo bay melted. When the fire suppression system activated, it slowed the spread but couldn't extinguish it. Lithium battery fires can't be stopped with conventional extinguishers. They burn hotter and release flammable gases. That single detail would become the center of the investigation. UPS and Boeing engineers worked side by side with federal investigators to reconstruct the cargo manifest. It revealed that multiple packages contained electronic devices with lithium batteries, some declared, some not. The origin point of the fire matched the container that held those shipments. The cause was clear: a thermal runaway reaction triggered by one faulty battery. It was a nightmare scenario that aviation safety experts had warned about for years. As the news spread, the public was stunned. Another cargo plane lost. Another crew gone. The media quickly drew comparisons to earlier UPS and FedEx incidents, especially the UPS Flight 1003-154 crash a few years before, also during an early morning approach. Questions poured in. Was it maintenance failure, human error, or something more systemic within the cargo industry? The NTSB's final report took months to complete. When it was released, it pointed to several factors: the dangerous nature of lithium battery shipments, insufficient fire detection capabilities in cargo compartments, and the overwhelming heat and smoke that rendered the cockpit uninhabitable. The investigators recommended stronger cargo container fire resistance, better smoke detection, and stricter labeling and packaging of hazardous materials. UPS implemented new safety measures, but for the families of the pilots, it was little comfort. In the months that followed, the crash site became a quiet memorial. Locals left flowers and notes near the tree line where the wreckage once burned. The company paid tribute to the crew, calling them heroes who fought to the end. Pilots across the industry spoke out about the need for reform. Many admitted they had flown with similar cargo, aware of the risks but trusting the system to protect them. Now, they weren't so sure. Behind the scenes, the FAA began reviewing how cargo is declared, and airlines started pressuring shippers to better identify dangerous goods. Lithium batteries were eventually restricted or required to be shipped with special containment packaging. But the underlying truth remained: air cargo operations still carry inherent risks that most people never think about. Every package, every box, every shipment represents both commerce and potential danger. The UPS flight disaster over Kentucky wasn't just another aviation accident, it was a wake-up call. A reminder that even in the most advanced aircraft with the best trained crews, one overlooked hazard can bring everything down. For UPS, the lessons were painful but necessary. The company invested heavily in fire-resistant containers, installed improved cockpit smoke barriers, and trained crews for faster, more aggressive responses to cargo fires. Yet, even today, the memory of that morning haunts the skies over Kentucky. In aviation circles, pilots still talk about it. The cockpit voice recording is used in safety seminars. Flight instructors replay those final minutes to teach new pilots the reality of smoke emergencies, how quickly visibility can vanish, how fast systems can fail, and how critical calm decision-making becomes when the world around you is burning. One of the most chilling aspects of the recording is the humanity in their voices. You can hear the captain's determination, the first officer's urgency, both fighting not just for their own lives, but for control of the aircraft, hoping to bring it home. But physics and chemistry were against them. The lithium fire had breached containment. In the last seconds, alarms filled the cockpit, and one pilot could be heard saying, "We're not gonna make it." Then silence. When rescue crews reached the site, they found the main fuselage broken in two, the wings separated, and debris scattered across a 500-yard radius. The cockpit section was buried under layers of burnt metal and earth. It took days to identify all remains. The NTSB noted that the impact occurred just 1,000 feet short of the runway threshold. They were seconds away from safety, seconds away from survival. In the following year, documentaries, safety boards, and aviation forums dissected the sequence of events second by second. Could they have done anything differently? Could a faster descent or earlier diversion have saved them? The conclusion was painful. Even with perfect decision-making, the intensity of the fire made survival almost impossible. The systems aboard the 767 freighter simply weren't built to handle a lithium battery inferno of that magnitude. The tragedy reignited global debate about transporting hazardous materials by air. Regulators imposed stricter limits, and some airlines stopped carrying lithium batteries entirely. But cargo giants like UPS, DHL, and FedEx continued operations under new guidelines balancing safety with business demands. The memory of the Kentucky crash became a constant reminder in their training programs. The phrase "what went wrong this time" echoed not as blame but as a challenge, a call to learn from the past, to never let complacency take hold. Even now, years later, pilots flying out of Louisville at dawn often glance toward the horizon where the smoke once rose. The early morning haze looks eerily similar, the same mist, the same silence. For them, it's a quiet tribute to those who never came back. And while most people see UPS jets as just another part of the skyline, those who know the story see something else: the bravery of two aviators who fought the impossible. Every night, when the massive sorting hub at Worldport comes alive, the hum of engines fills the air again. Thousands of packages roll down conveyor belts, bound for cities and countries across the globe. The system is a marvel of logistics and technology, one that depends on precision, timing, and trust. But hidden beneath that smooth operation is a fragile truth. Safety is earned, not guaranteed. It takes only one small failure, one overheating cell, one misdeclared package to bring tragedy. For investigators, this crash reaffirmed that aviation safety isn't just about technology, it's about accountability. Someone packed that box, someone labeled it, someone loaded it. A chain of small, human decisions led to catastrophe. And while most will never know the names of the crew, their sacrifice reshaped an entire industry's approach to cargo safety. The final NTSB statement summed it up best. The crew performed with professionalism and bravery in the face of an unsurvivable emergency. Those words now stand etched in memory. The Kentucky hills may have healed, the wreckage long cleared, but the lessons of that morning still guide the hands of every pilot and every ground worker who touches a box marked flammable. The disaster over Kentucky wasn't just a story about loss, it was a story about resolve. About how aviation learns, adapts, and refuses to repeat the same mistakes. Because in the world of flight, every error is written in lives, and every lesson is paid for in full. So when you see a UPS jet climbing into the sunrise, remember the crew who didn't make it back. Remember how close they came to safety. And remember that behind every takeoff, every glowing beacon in the fog, there are humans trusting their machines, their training, and fate itself. The sky remembers everything, and over Kentucky, it still remembers that morning when things went terribly, tragically wrong.